Hello and welcome to part 2 of my mini-series where I create the Domtoren from Utrecht in Planet Coaster. And in this episode, I thought, since a few of you, or one of you said, I've never actually heard of this building before until I looked it up, so I thought I would discuss or enlighten you as to some of the history of this building. I won't go into too much detail, but I will talk about some of the things that I really like about it. So the Dom of Utrecht was part of the St. Martin's Cathedral during the Middle Ages, and it was called the Diocese of Utrecht. It is the one church in the Netherlands that closely resembles the style of classic Gothic architecture developed in France, as all the other Gothic structures in the Netherlands, they belong to many regional variants of the style. So this is one that follows more of a French style and is quite imposing in that regard. The tower itself is 112 meters high and the centerpiece to the city of Utrecht, and it gives a sort of feeling, something like Paris with the Eiffel Tower in the middle. So it creates an identity for the city, and that's why I really love it so much. It gives Utrecht a sort of image to itself. You know how London has Big Ben, but when you go to Amsterdam, you're like, oh, what has Amsterdam got? You know, it hasn't got this huge structure to sort of give you something. Like Paris has the Eiffel Tower, and you know, Manhattan has the Empire State Building, and so Utrecht has the Domtoren, and that's why it's so identifiable. And anyone can easily recognize the city because of it. And it also looks very beautiful because it's so old and such a huge structure in that regard. The Gothic structure itself was initiated in 1254 by Henry van Vienen, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but Henry van Vienen, with the construction of the tower beginning in 1321 and finished many, many years later in 1382. So imagine how long this must have taken. They must have really put a lot of money and resources and designs, and at the time a lot of the people didn't like it very much. But it's a very good example of architecture from that time that didn't show the buttresses. Everything is hidden, so all the structure is completely self-contained, and you can't see how it's containing itself until you go on the inside. And I have to say, I have been on the inside of the Domtoren, and it was really fun to actually walk up there. I mean, it's very tiring, and it's actually quite freaky because I hate heights, so once I was at the top, I was incredibly scared because the barriers are not very big, but the view is incredible. Like, you get such a great view of the city of Utrecht, and the city of Utrecht is such a beautiful city that it's the perfect spot to look at all the little different pieces of architecture, the canals and the roads and all the wonderful Dutch things that you can see from that. What else can I say? The most interesting thing I think about the Domtoren is the fact that in 1674, the central portion of the cathedral, with the nave, which is the main body, the church, collapsed because of a tornado. And when I was, don't quote me on this because I didn't read this in Wikipedia, but when I was there, the guides, who are doing a great job of doing it in Dutch and English, said that they were very cheap with the nave of the church and built it out of wood, and that's why it didn't last. In fact, many times this structure, this church is so old that it's been some of it's been lost in fires and been rebuilt a very long time ago, so you actually don't know how it would have been in the beginning. So I thought that was very fascinating because I didn't think tornadoes were that common in Europe, but considering how windy the Netherlands is, I am more or less, it makes a lot of sense to me actually. As a flat plane, you know, and heat, I don't know how tornadoes work, but I can imagine that tornadoes could exist in the Netherlands because it's so incredibly windy, and I even remember trying to cycle against the wind there is completely impossible. I don't think I've been to a windier place than the Netherlands. So whenever the wind was blowing against my direction, I'd literally have to dismount my bike and just walk through it, which would actually make it quicker than cycling. That's how strong the wind in the Netherlands is. It's pretty interesting in that regard. Because the nave of the church was destroyed, the dom became this freestanding tower, which is quite unique in that regard. Not many churches have just one freestanding tower. They're usually connected to an abbey or something of that regard. And they never bothered to rebuild it. I don't know why. Maybe because of the lack of money, or the lack of need, or the lack of this or that. I think they made a temporary reconstruction of it at one point. Not when I lived there, but they made a temporary one, so it gives you a sort of idea of what it could have looked like. But that part at the moment is just a nice little square with a statue. It's one of the nicest parts of Utrecht. And I remember always going through to cycle, because I love cycling through the Dom. It was just so much fun. It's almost like a theme park in that regard. It's fun. Anyway, I think I will leave it there because that's all I really wanted to say about the Utrecht Dom, in case you hadn't heard of it, or you hadn't ever seen it or wanted to know a bit more. That's the most interesting things I could find about that. So I will leave it there, and I will see you in the next episode of this mini-series where I will add some lighting. I have to admit, I'm not going to add too much lighting. I add one side of lighting just for the promotional part of this video, you know, the pit you see in the beginning, just to give you an overview of what it looks like. I just did one side because in about 9 hours, the Alpha 2 is going to be released, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. I haven't even put stuff around it or this kind of thing. I might just finish it off quickly with some pathways around it and some trees and this and that. So I will leave it there, and I will see you in part 3 where you will see more of the structure being built and possibly finished. I think it will be 3 parts, maybe 4. I don't know. So I will see you then. Tot ziens! klik hier voor mijn oude video's. Dankjewel. Ik spreek geen Nederlands. Tot ziens. Doeg!